Hi, my name is Mark Cook, and I'm thrilled to be talking to medical professionals and providing some continuing education to help your single office or your wide chain, a company of practices across the whole state. We'll be talking about patients, but we'll also be talking about customers, because much of the work that we do as medical professionals is to internal customers. Either way, we'll be discussing principles that are research-based, include a New York Times bestseller and an Amazon bestseller, and will improve verifiable, exceptional outcomes for a team like yours. One thing to note is that we were never able to tie a person's traits or personality characteristics to better or worse results. Now, I realize that these are all the rage. Very, very bright people in the world have studied traits and characteristics and their effect on whether you can do better work or be a leader. That it's not who you are that matters, it is what you do that matters. And so to be more engaged in an endeavor or a strategy within your company is mostly up to you, even if your boss is not asking you to do it. We'll also be talking about some principles that will affect leadership. The professionals, either you yourself in your practice, or all of the managerial and administrative and professionals that need to lead teams. These principles will help them tremendously. Windfall series. It's a series of workshops and speeches, frameworks that deliver to people exceptional outcomes. Let me tell you a little bit about why we chose the word windfall. I think all of us know that the word windfall means an exceptional gain from some surprising source. What you may not know is that back in the 1400s, when this word first started to appear in the English language, kings owned everything. Workers and common people got nothing unless they were given what they received. There was one exception, and that was when an unexpected storm came and blew the fruit and the lumber from the trees. And that was the exceptional moment when the workers and the common people could take that unexpected gain. And the reason we chose the word windfall to focus on was because what we want people to do is to look at their current role and try to find ways to go beyond the bullets in the job description to help the team, the organization, or whatever they're part of to fulfill its mission. And so we want people to be bigger and better partners for not just their teammates, but the teams around them and the internal and external customers that they work with. And so we've provided these few frameworks for them to know how to do that. And we've worked with 4,000 teams to actually improve results. And one of the unexpected results in studying the people that are leading the other doers was that strategy seemed to often be seen as a leader activity and not an activity that everyone was involved with. And this is a big problem when it comes to both success and exceptional results. When we're in a situation where we're not exactly in a position to do what we want to do, and the direction and the path to success is not clear, so therefore we don't know what the company wants us to do, then we feel a little uneasy. And if it continues, we become very uneasy to the point of distress. Think of it like this. When we don't have a clear direction, it's almost like we're in a fog. It's no wonder that 40 to 60% of workers are not actively engaged in their work, because they literally don't know what to actively be engaged with. The bullets are on their job description. The leaders think they should understand, but the communication has come but not been comprehended. And so they feel like they're in a fog. And I think almost every one of us has felt this way. And so it's important for all of us to change our mindset and rethink who owns strategy. Strategy is really about paving a path that cuts through the fog for all of the rank and file to understand where we're all headed together.
What does the technical term custodian mean in your work? For example, at the most basic level, a janitor keeps the premises of a building clean and makes minor repairs. But a custodian does more. A custodian may clean, but may also be entrusted with guarding or having custody of a property, a person, a child. This is a set of responsibilities, potentially as weighty as a parent or even a CEO. For example, consider whether Tayro was a janitor or custodian in the Western Hospital where he met a boy named Josh. Josh was Mary's first child, a time of unknowns. One day when Josh's lips turned blue, Mary rushed him to the ER and heard the words, congenital heart defect and surgery. Later he woke with new pain and strange surroundings. It was scary. As most of us have experienced, it is hard to rest having hospital personnel rushing in to make rounds and wake us up 24/7. For example, most janitors rush in to clean a checklist of things every single night. Every time Josh's door burst open, his face panicked as janitors, nurses, and even doctors rushed in. The exception was the careful entry. These were people that always seemed to help Josh the most. The night Mary and Josh finally met Tayro, they heard a careful knock at Josh's door, and both felt a rush of hope. Quietly, a warm face peeked through the door, remembers Mary. A soft-spoken man in gray scrubs put his fingers to his lips. He let us know he was aware of our sleeping Josh. This was unusual. Tayro whispered, "Good morning. My name is Tayro, and I'm here to prepare a better day. May I come in?" As other janitors rushed to the bedside to clean the high-touch bed rails, it usually startled Josh. Tayro was the first person in 3 days to speak to her son like a child. Most everyone else saw Josh as a room, a line on a graph, a case number, or a project. As Tayro moved softly with caring to the side of Josh's bed, Tayro accomplished the same tasks his co-workers did, but in such a different and better way. He was such an exception to the rule, Tayro gave tiny pep talks as he moved around the room. He would say, "I see a card and teddy bear from your family. This means they expect you home soon and know you are getting better. I see you are drinking your water. This means you are getting stronger. Your eyes look so healthy today. I can tell you're becoming yourself again. You are so strong. You are brave. This was hard, but you are going to get through it. Everything is going to be okay. You can do this. You look better, move better. I'll bet you feel better." Tayro saw himself as part of the hospital team. He knew his role, but understood it as so much larger than most in his position. He saw himself as a partner with the doctors and nurses, not because of high respect they had given him, but because he understood the impact that he could make. Tayro was literally exceptional. And Mary so appreciated how different and better Tayro made his experience that Mary wept as she recalled his service. "We had been through so much in 2.5 weeks and still had to travel home," Mary recalled. "I remember going to bed the first night home. Josh was asleep next to me. I needed to write thank you notes to the expert surgeons, but as I wrote, I surprised myself by writing the first card to Tayro. The other notes could wait until I thanked Tayro, the custodian, the caretaker of my child in his room. Tayro has worked for the hospital for about 5 years. When we asked him why he moved from patient services to housekeeping and stayed, he said, 'In this job, my patients and coworkers are like family.' Now listen to this. You know," Tayro said, "it doesn't matter how good a child's surgeons and nurses are if he doesn't have the right equipment in the room. We have to be patient-focused. That's where we really fulfill our greatest purpose and gain our joy. If we just follow the work papers over and over, all the technical work doesn't mean anything if the other person isn't better off in the end. We make people better. That should be all of our purpose."
Following the lead of Jane Dunn at University of Michigan and Amy Wisnowski at Yale, Tayro's story, he is in a role that everyone can understand. We went to the hospital and looked at different roles in the hospital, and we found 2 categories of janitor. The majority follow a checklist and they get things done. There is, however, some percent of these people that see themselves as part of the healing team. We tell about a woman we call Mary, and her son that we call Josh, and how they were affected by the two categories of janitor and what specific things that Tero did, relaxing the heart rate, lowering the blood pressure. You would never expect a janitor to affect the outcome of a medical case. And so we talk about seeing one's role as bigger than the bullets on the job description. We need to feel at all levels we should be part of the strategy. We should understand what it's about. So what I'm going to share with you today, some words that you've heard thousands of times, but I'm going to add an extra spin. I want to start out with a story about a gentleman, Dr. Brad Parkinson, a rocket scientist. The government was doing a big project to try to build a new way to navigate planes and rockets. The first project said nothing about helping citizenry or humanity. It just was trying to prove the technology, and they couldn't get the project up and running. So they called on Brad to give a proposal, and he came in, and instead of trying to simulate performance, he said, look, we can produce a meaningful result in the short run. Really, what we need to do, if we can create a system that will land 5 rockets in a fairly small hole in the ground some distance away, my team's system has worked well. There just will be no disputing it. But then he went further and he said, our strategy for the long term, if we want to help all of humanity with this project, and if after maybe years, if we could create for every citizen, not just of the United States, but for the world, an open, free utility to help them find the people and places that they love, then this project is worth doing. He taught us the power of a good vision. Left the meeting, and one of the generals that wanted to buy planes with the budget and came up to him and literally pointed in his chest and said, this project will never happen and I will make sure of it. Luckily, he had leadership that cleared the path. After they landed those 5 rockets in a hole, they started proving this ability. And so, in fact, they ended up launching their first satellite that would become part of this system. And they proceeded to 24, and today they're 36. And of course, all of you know by now that he was the father of the GPS navigation system. And his teams of 5 completely different types had to do things like develop software, develop new hardware, invent ways to get the rocket that high. One of the great inventions that came out of their work called Pathway in the Sky, where if you see a storm like this where there's fog and mist trying to get through something like a canyon, you can't fly the plane safely, even with lasers and all the technology that has existed. What GPS does is it comes from the heavens. It doesn't have to pierce through the fog. It locates things on Earth in such detail, far more detail than Apple has paid our phone to perceive. The system is made to predict where things are within a millimeter, within a pencil lead. They can take that accuracy and technology in a larger project like a plane, and they can literally paint a pathway through a canyon, even if there's fog. Now, you and I all use this every day. Every time you turn on your GPS, it goes 13,000 miles into space and then communicates across continents to tell you where you are. It is $1 billion a year budget system. But as Dr. Parkinson is quick to point out, the industry and the revenue that the United States has received because of this project has dwarfed the expense. It's one of the most lucrative projects ever to be run. Not only that, but the science community voted it the most valuable space endeavor ever taken, more than the Mars landing, more than men on the moon, more than anything, because it affects all of humanity. As they worked through their project, that vision carried everyone emotionally and intellectually to the destination. And without a clear vision, they would be operating in fog. Because in fact, his vision did come to pass. Every citizen of the world can use our GPS system to tell where they are. Now, with all this investment and all this effort and all of Dr. Parkinson's team's collaboration and cooperation, none of it works unless you have one thing that you, the user, have to provide. Now think about that for a minute. Unless you put a destination into your GPS system, it is no good. All it can tell you is where you are. Strategy is really about paving a path.
that cuts through the fog for all of the rank and file to understand where we're all headed together. That path is really the most essential set of purposes that we fulfill and deliver to customers at 4 different times.
As we return to the workplace, we're going to talk a little bit about purpose and vision. We're going to talk a little bit about a mission and objectives and the difference between what objectives could mean in your organization and what a goal could mean to you as an individual. There's a lot of confusion in the rank and file as what we actually mean by these things, or if we mean anything or care about them at all. And yet, if we're clear and authentic with these things, they can be quite powerful. We measured up to 600 variables. The top variable that affected results most powerfully was actually a passion for purpose. There's a story that I love that points out very obviously the power of purpose. Once there was a university president, and she was excited to build the new administration building. And so she invited the architects and the planners in, and they had the typical meetings where they put the blueprints down on the table and progressed through the project. And it got to the end, and it was time to put the sidewalks in. And they had one of their last typical meetings, and the architect and planners came in and said, "Ms. President, we've designed them. Here are the blueprints. Here's where they should go. We've done a lot of these." And that president looked up and she said to those planners, "I don't want any sidewalks. In fact, all I want you to do is plant the grass, put the sprinklers in, and come back in 9 months." They were dumbfounded. They had no idea. Well, you need to have sidewalks. We're the experts at this. We've done it all over the world. She had to say a second time, "I don't want sidewalks. I want you to plant the grass, put the sprinkling system in, and come back in 9 months." They couldn't believe it. But then when they came back 9 months later, you can imagine what they saw. They saw paths like this worn in the grass. And the meeting was very, very short that day. And all she said was, "Now I want you to put the sidewalks where the paths are worn, please." This is a story that points out the importance of thinking about your work, who it really served and what it's really for. Were those sidewalks serving a beautiful campus? Were they serving the president? Were they serving helicopter pilots that would look down and see how organized and smart they were? Were they serving the people that wanted to connect with the people and find the places that they needed to go? And of course, the answer is the latter, and that wise president showed that. You've got to find within your strategy a passion for purpose by finding that path that goes along to success and what you're trying to achieve in the future. So when we do a strategy session, we present a number of researched human needs in their various studies. They did things like connect people with heart rate monitors and skin temperature monitors and fMRI machines, and they presented them with scenarios and pictures and words and all sorts of things. And some were called needs, and some were called wants, and some were desires, and some were reflexes, and some were positive emotions. And whatever the study was, if you look at the labels, you can see that those find their way in your life. Some of us have had break-ins, or we feel insecure in our job, and so we have security issues. And some of them compete, some of them complement, and you can pick one that's primary. And so we present these 12 needs, same executives at the same company. They end up disagreeing quite dramatically with what they're actually trying to accomplish for the human beings that they call a target market.
A vision is not a statement. Vision is something you see. It's just beyond the horizon. It's somewhere where you're trying to reach in about 5 years.
And what should happen in the future? So we focus on seeing rather than writing. Instead of having a writing contest or wordsmithing the perfect English in a vision statement, we don't do vision statements like that. We make sure that we can see them with some of the most important elements that you see in our episodic memory.
A mission is not the same as a purpose. It's not the same as a vision. A mission is a target that you can accomplish in 2 years, or that you might fail at, but there's no in between.
Now, when it comes to mission, this was really interesting to me because the mission is always kind of the same thing as the purpose. And yet, in my studies, I found that the most successful teams and companies actually see the distinction between mission and purpose. Sure, mission can be a cause, but it has a shorter term life than a purpose. Every 2 to 4 years, we should rethink the mission and redefine it, find that secondary need and that tertiary need, and we accentuate them within the primary purpose. We should create these differentiators and these advantages that we bring that are unique, that put our thumbprint on our purpose, unlike our competitors. The mission is something that's a tangible accomplishment. But a mission is something that multiple teams can get behind. This gentleman named Leif Babin points out a really great example. He talks about an example. He's a former Navy SEAL, and when they went and tried to protect a city in Afghanistan, and they were going to do it with an army team, what their assignment was to cover for the Afghan police force to get back to their homes. And so they were on the opposite side of the army team, and they saw the Afghan police arrive back where they needed to arrive. And so, of course, they took their troops home. And he was brought into the office, and his commanding officer just yelled at him. And he was so confused because they'd accomplished their mission, he thought. His leader said, "What happened to the army team?" And he said, "I don't know what happened to them. That wasn't part of our assignment." And he said, "It was always part of your assignment. You always look at mission from a multiple team. You take care of each other, and you cover, and you move with each other. You failed this assignment." And he got some harsh penalties for that, actually. So mission is something that we do because we can cooperate and we can work with each other more than anything on earth. It's interesting, if you take 15 apes, the great apes that are closest genetically and intellectually to a human being, and you put them in a stadium like this, they will kill each other if there's any strangers. And yet every Saturday we show up to stadiums and cheer our teams on, and for the most part 100,000 people can just drive home. We know how to cooperate. So a mission is something to be accomplished by multiple teams.
Objectives are targets for teams. They should be negotiated with each other, the teammates within the team, not just the leader. And these should be discussed at least annually, if not semi-annually. And these objectives should be clear and contribute to the mission.
My friend Bruce, he led one of the most successful teams in healthcare. His marketing team always got the highest marks because every year, twice a year, they would get together and they would negotiate each other's objectives, and they would use these to combine their success. And they would incent instead of individual, they paid a team bonus. And so if everyone's goals and the common objectives were met, then they would get paid more than if some didn't. And so they began to help each other so they would achieve their objectives. And that's the way that a team should be led. The word passion, one interviewee pointed out, originally meant a life sacrifice for others. And then it became what we all think today is an extremely strong emotion. So it's weakened quite a bit, and still it's a very strong word. You have to give everyone an opportunity and find ways for them to sacrifice for each other as the team, because that's what will build the strong emotion that we call passion. This is our dog, Coda. And when he was a little younger, of course, I fell in love with the dog more than anyone. So we took him to the beach, and we were nervous. We found a dog beach, and there weren't a lot of people around. It was off season. And so we tethered him to this stake. We're right in the middle of the beach, not near the water or the top, and people were walking near the water or up near the boardwalk. We had our space to ourselves until all of a sudden, an older woman brought her dog right towards us. Our Coda did what you'd expect. He took off. We had thought he had understood where his place was. he started to run. Sure enough, when he reached, the leash snapped him back, and I ran over. I thought he was dead. He just laid there lifeless, and I was so sad. He was okay finally. And as I went through some of my research on leading a team, a long leash by a leader is something we say a lot. And a long leash is not freedom. And latitude is not ownership. There's nothing that says a leader cannot cooperate and guide just like a teammate can and influence without restraint an employee to do what should be done for customers and internal customers.
A goal can be a word that you reserve for an individual. The word goal has some important meaning about passion and achievement and accomplishing something specific as an individual contributor.
You've got to find within your strategy a passion for purpose by finding that path that goes along to success and what you're trying to achieve in the future. Because when a person finds passion and is willing to do something that they are excited about, they outperform anyone that is unexcited. And so if you can align the individual's personal passion and their personal goal with what the team's trying to accomplish, and then that team's objectives with what the multiple teams are trying to accomplish in the shorter term 2-year mission. And then finally make sure that we're always paying attention to the primary need to customer. And if you connect an individual all the way through that path to that vision, you've really done something. And of course it's difficult, and it takes work on both the project side and on the people side where culture lives. I wish you luck, and I want to encourage you to feel like you're part of your company's strategy instead of waiting and thinking that they're going to do it all. We start with innovation for all types of teams, not just software, not just technology, for any type of team. And we try to help you achieve quick wins, exceptional results rapidly. We call that method rapid innovation. For example, if you were to stack thousands and thousands of work cases, projects, initiatives of all types and varieties, this is what it would look like. If you look across the bottom, you'll see on the left, the very poorest results stack low on the left axis. And then more and more poorest results of work would start to increase based on the improvement in their quality. And they would bump into the status quo. Now, I want you to notice the status quo in the middle is huge. It is work that all of us see every day around us. And through social cues, may even show us best practices because it happens most often. But that is not the case. Now I want you to look to the very right, to exceptional outcome projects and initiatives. They shape differently. You see that it's not gradual at all, popping out like a nose. They're shouting, I am different. And so we have 2 criteria for exceptional results. We measured 9 different things, but if you want to know what exceptional really means, it means that it's different because it's an exception, and it means it's better. So different and better together. And your work is the same way. It has to be different than the status quo is doing it, different than you did it yesterday. It has to be better as well. So we start with innovation and achieve exceptional results rapidly. We do it on real work. So what I want you to do right now, think about all of the projects or areas of work and think of all of those things on your work plate. When we ask this question, we usually hear people numbering the things on their plate between about 5 and 25. And then we ask a very difficult question, and it will be difficult for you too. If you looked at all the things on your plate that you're expected to get done, what is the most important priority that you see? Even come up with 3 or 4. But it's been shown, not just by our research, but other people's research, that if you try to do more than 1 or 2 things in an exceptional fashion, you actually, when you get past 4, create worse results by trying to do everything in an exceptional way. We recommend that you do what your mother told you. If something's worth doing, it's worth doing well. But not everything should be done in an exceptional fashion. So you have to look at what you're working on and find the one thing and start making progress and improvement. We'll give you a framework for the innovation blitz that we use. And we call it the 5 jobs of an innovator. Because as we looked at how teams were improving their work, we could not correlate a personality, a person with better work. We used some regression, fairly sophisticated statistics to prove that the events, the actions, the things that you do actually are far more related to your outcome than who you are. So the top 5, they looked a lot like the essential tasks of different types of innovation roles of an innovator.
The first job of an innovator is called the scientist. And the scientist's essential task is to discover the minds behind the metrics of business.
It can be explained by a brief example. I'll give you a summary of Marty Cooper's story. Marty Cooper, a long time ago, when he was a young man, went to work, if you can believe it, for a tiny little company called Motorola. And at Motorola, Marty Cooper was assigned to a team of engineers that were really excited about the challenge of trying to fit the equipment for a new car phone into the console of a car. So it became a puzzle, and they were excited to figure it out. They were focused on the work itself. And as Marty came onto the team, something started bothering him. And he started asking very difficult questions about what the customers of their project would actually be, what telephone users. Marty had this ability to do what is an important thing to producing exceptional work, and that is to look beyond what you can see and imagine deeper into the mind of the customer, what they're really after, because they don't even know. The first kind of scientist you have to be as a psychologist, you have to dig deep into the mind of your customer, or even your internal customer, your coworker, your teammate, through a process to consider deeply proven purposes of human beings. And then you also have to dig deeper into the money trail, because people often vote with their money and organizations vote with their money. Any organization has to pay attention to where the dollar flows, why the dollar flows there, and how to get it through the organization. Almost like an organism. Grow and accelerate the top things and slow and decrease the bottom things, and how to interact and affect the organization and people around them better to do better work. And so again, to discover the deeper purpose.
The second job of an innovator is called the photojournalist. Because like a photojournalist, your job will be to go on site where your patients, your customers, and those even internally down the line from you receive and use your work to get a bold and blunt encounter with what's really going on in their world.
My name is Dina Peters, and I work for a Fortune 500 grocer where I'm the pricing manager for produce and floral. The issue that we were having was that all of the products in the store get automatically price checked from a third party. They can't do that with fresh product. So what we do is we have 23 markets where employees from stores go out to collect this competitive price check information. The information that was coming back from the store personnel was incomplete, inaccurate, and a lot of times we had to hunt it down because they actually didn't turn it in at the deadline. We were taking produce personnel out of the department. Produce, more than anywhere else in the store, needs service for the customer. I was invited to an innovative workshop, and what I really enjoyed was I had never been in a workshop before that made me do things during the workshop. So one of the things that we were told to do during the lab was to actually go out and see for yourself. What I didn't realize is that I learned a tremendous amount by watching for myself. I actually booked time with the field merchandiser and met him at a competitor, and we went to go and collect the price checks. He wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. So that again was going to create some pricing accuracy issues. I didn't realize how long the process took. On a good check, it took about 2 hours,
And on a not so good check, it could take upwards to 4 or 5 hours. So that was 400 plus hours that the produce employees were away from the customer, being able to service and help them find what they needed. We went out to a competitor and I was able to watch how they collected the price check data in one of their handheld systems. So we took one market out of the 23 markets and we tested it on a weekly basis to collect all fresh produce, and we were able to roll it out into all of the markets. And what that did for my team was it completely flipped. And ultimately, this company is more competitive because of this team's great work. Obviously, the best part of this whole experience is that there are now 400 hours a month put back into the store to service the produce customer. So we were able to put $144,000 of service back into the produce department. And I know what you're thinking, well, how much did that cost you? But it didn't cost us anything. In fact, we saved $10,000 a month net.
This is called many different things. This is a very unusual work practice. Leaders and workers don't usually do this at all, but the innovators do. And what it means is that they go to the place where the customer receives and uses the benefit, the product, the offering, whatever you're doing. This might even be for an internal customer. You may be giving a report to Jane every single week, and you may need to actually go visit her in her cube for the first time, or her office, and see how it lands in her email, in her own reports that she provides to other people. Capture every angle of the customer journey. Serious innovators that spend a year or so developing a new product may be doing something called ethnography, product ethnography. But as normal people, as normal leaders in cubes and offices, we need a rapid form of innovation. We discovered people winning awards in projects doing something more like a photojournalist. What do you think this picture is?
It looks to me like the flag raising at Ground Zero.
Precisely. This is a photo that changed how we saw an event. It turned it from negative and it began the positive. The very next day after it was taken, it started to change minds and head towards a positive place. And it just flooded our nation in every publication and everywhere you could look. And it shows many things that we won't cover right now. But I want to tell you about the gentleman who took the picture. This Thomas Franklin was a journalist at the Reporter, and he took this picture after taking 1,000 pictures. In fact, he shares the roll that he took that picture on. And you would be shocked at how many pictures are not nearly as good as that one snapshot. And the principle behind this is, one, as you ask him how to do exceptional work and get exceptional outcomes, like getting your artwork put on a stamp to raise $10 million for charity, he would say, first, you have to go where the action is. You have to go where the problem is. You have to go where the work is received and used. The second thing he would say is you have to take a lot of pictures. And of course he says that because he's a photojournalist. But we found innovators with cameras and video cameras going into places that are seemingly very normal and discovering massive improvements and quick wins by taking their camera with them, in hospitals and other examples. And they get together as teams and they think about what they mean to people and customers, and they cause improvement that are massive. And so that job is about capturing every single angle of your customer.
The third job of an innovator is the crowdsourcer. And what this means is to be a smarter crowdsourcer, to reach out to what I call adjacent experts, new people that you haven't spoken to get breakthrough ideas.
Now, we typically think of a crowdsourcer as where we're reaching out to millions of people, maybe even purchasing the use of a platform to get a lot of experts all over the world's input. But we're talking about a more targeted crowdsourcing that we discovered in our work. We just simply want you to go out and ask maybe a dozen adjacent experts. I mean, what does that phrase mean, adjacent experts? We want you to find people that parallel, trying to solve something in principle that is similar to what you're trying to solve. A summary of one of the stories that we go through in more detail is a couple of hospital teams trying to solve a process problem in transferring patients. And they got together as brilliant MDs and even a PhD in nursing on their team, and all these medical professionals didn't make much progress until one day on accident, the doctor reached out to someone who was in the racing industry of all places and began a conversation to actually solve the problem that he was trying to solve, and immediately solved it 50%. Now, this is an example. Going to someone in the racing, they don't know anything about heart surgery, but they knew in principle how to do something in so much better fashion than these people were doing it, that they added their value better than another surgeon could or another ER practitioner. And so we teach people how to find out who these people could be, and we teach them how to actually have the conversations, asking the questions in the right way, very natural questions, and getting answers, and even reaching out to people right there that are all over the world.
The fourth job of an innovator is called the master chef, and the master chef is not a metaphor. You see, master chefs are highly innovative. They teach us something important. After the first three jobs of an innovator are complete, you'll have amassed a huge pile of 100 potential breakthrough ideas in your mind. And it's the job of a master chef to now converge on two highly complementary, most beneficial improvements to make now. Because when you try to make all the changes that you'll discover at once, it's called a train wreck, not innovation. And so the master chef realizes that you need to converge now instead of diverge. And
we try to simplify this and get people to look at all of the ideas that they've come up with through these practices and consider two new ideas, two complementary things that if they were added to your work, whether you're a janitor or you're a CEO, if you had just at one time added two complements of all those 100 ideas, which would they be? And we go through a process and give them a chance to try to consider that. And I would encourage you to do that, because we all know that when you try to get all those great ideas out of your head, and brainstorming with more than 4 people is highly inefficient. And also the problem is when you try to implement even a dozen of those ideas or 10 of those ideas, it's not innovation or improvement, it's a problem. So we encourage you to find two. We use, for an example, a longer version of the story of Grant Achatz, who has an amazing turnaround story as to become the best chef in the nation. And he owns 3 different restaurants. And he has discovered through some of his personal tries not just how to make better food, but he's brought elements into the food that are completely unexpected. Like, what about the visual and other stimuli that you encounter? What if you lit this on fire, and he does, and ultimately you would start to smell those oak and maple leaves? And if you lived in Michigan, your memories would start rapidly going to your childhood when it used to be legal to burn those mounds of raked up leaves. And that's what happens with his restaurants in Michigan. And so he also takes unexpected food that goes together complementary, that hasn't been used together, and colors the palate with taste. And so we teach people a way to converge after they've diverged into 100 ideas to come to those two complementary ideas and give them practice at doing so.
the fifth job of an innovator is called the mountaineer. It's now time to bring your full team and your most important clients, customers, and patients to the peak of the mountain. And the peak of the mountain is their result and their delight, not our KPIs, not how we define Net Promoter Scores, but how they do.
In our research, as we were looking at what was going on, we noticed a chart that had a jagged shape that rose to the right as it increased. The unparalleled, unprecedented benefits of customers being thrilled with what we do. And someone made the comment, it looks like a mountain. What this is all about is finding out what we're really trying to create in a KPI, or in what are we really asking in a Net Promoter Score. We're really asking if we're benefiting human beings in massive quantities. Or are we just trying to get our work done the way we think it should be done? An example that we use is we ask people about what the business of Dow and other companies like them are in. And usually they quickly say, well, chemicals. And we write it on the board, chemicals. And then we talk to them about customers, various kinds, firemen that prevent them from jackets that prevent them from dying because of fire and clothing that they wear. And so when we tell the long version of these stories and how that team gets to meet some of these customers, they quickly change their answer from chemical company to life-saving company. And so we have to ask ourselves at the end of our work, what is the measurement if our work was truly exceptional? Because if it's just getting the work done, it will very likely and statistically have a probability to land in that status quo. And so we use the 5 jobs of an innovator to help people make their work exceptional. Not all their work, but at least one thing every single day they go to work. So that's the engine behind the Innovation Blitz. And the reason we call it Innovation Blitz is because they work on their own work and attack it. If you have a framework that you can use and you'll get an exceptional result quickly on a piece of work that's a priority, that confidence gets you engaged. And some of these practices we've gone over today, let's just take one of them, for example. One of them, we found that you are 17 times, that means 1,700% more likely to be engaged in your work and have the customers be engaged.
I want to thank you for joining me. I hope to meet you someday. Please reach out to me with any questions or anything I can help you with. My name is Mark Cook, and I can be found at markspencercook.com.